For nearly a decade, solitude had been his only companion, with conversations limited to whispered words meant for livestock and the endless prairie breeze. Yet everything shifted the moment Harper witnessed the Apache woman suspended from that ancient tree dominating Cold Pine's heart, because those tightening the noose bore official badges, while the holy man offering final words carried guilt beneath his fingernails. Sharp gusts sliced across the terrain like steel through fabric, each one promising that compassion had no home in this unforgiving territory. Harper remained motionless beside his cart, grain sack clutched tight, watching her body suspended in the air. This wasn't the peaceful stillness of someone already departed. Life still flickered within her frame. Faint but persistent, the sack tumbled from his grip as realization struck. Cold Pine had long abandoned any pretense of righteousness. The badge-wearing men had purchased their authority, not earned it. Her form convulsed suddenly, then once more unmistakably Apache. Ice flooded his veins. The last time he'd encountered a woman wrapped in deer hide, his beloved wife had still drawn breath beside him. Instinctively, his palm found the blade's handle. No conscious decision guided the movement, just deeply ingrained reflex. The gathered crowd muttered among themselves, feet shifting restlessly, yet nobody dared intervene. This spectacle wasn't about determining guilt or innocence, it was about sending a clear warning. Something anchored him in place. Perhaps it was her unwavering stare, steady even with the rope constricting her throat. Maybe the way the wind seemed to carry her unspoken defiance, like an unfinished melody. Or possibly the understanding that true warriors never pleaded for mercy. But this wasn't combat, this was cold-blooded murder. And the woman hadn't uttered a single sound of desperation. Cold Pine settled into its familiar nighttime routine, shutters secured, lanterns extinguished, quiet spreading like morning mist. But Harper found no rest that evening. He remained on his narrow bed above the stable, boots still laced, staring upward at the wooden ceiling. Her image haunted the darkness, not her physical beauty, though strength carved itself into her features. And the absence of tears, but the profound silence radiating from her expression. A quietness that spoke more powerfully than any rope could silence, rising carefully to avoid noise. Silver moonbeams filtered through barn wall gaps, illuminating his path. His rifle remained untouched tonight, demanded steel, not gunpowder. Down the hillside he moved, beyond the dried stream bed and past the tilting chapel. The cottonwood waited, branches stretched wide as if eternally prepared for its grim purpose. No sentries, no flames, just her silhouette swaying gently in the night breeze like she'd merged with the shadows themselves. Speed became essential. Once he drew near, blade ready, footsteps muffled by dust. A single clean cut severed the rope, and she collapsed into his embrace, surprisingly light. A harsh intake of air past her lips. Life endured. Her skin felt frozen, clothing shredded where the rope had abraded flesh. Her arms were also restrained. These bonds he severed next, working carefully to avoid causing additional harm. Number. Words came from her, eyes remaining closed, but her breathing continued, soft as a distant whisper. Harper didn't glance backward while carrying her from town. No reason to. Cold Pine had revealed its true nature, just as he had revealed his. When they reached his property's boundary, dawn's early glow painted the eastern peaks amber. His dwelling sat undisturbed, windows black, chimney smokeless, exactly as he preferred. He placed her on his sleeping area, retrieved the spare woolen covering from storage, kindled the small heating stove, and filled a metal container with water. Flames crackled softly while her breathing found steady rhythm in the warm light. Finally, he examined her closely. She appeared barely 20, definitely Apache. Facial structure reminiscent of his deceased wife, neck marked by bruises, blood staining her temple, earth ground into her skin. Yet beneath the damage lay something unshakable, the kind of resolve forged through hardship. Not terror, he noticed. The mark across her palm, Old, profound, intentional. A survivor's brand. This wasn't her first escape from death's grasp, he suspected. Settling beside her, elbows resting on knees, fingers interlaced, he contemplated the situation. 8 years of isolation, and now this woman breathed within his space, occupying his bed. Her identity remained unknown, her history a mystery. But one truth emerged clearly. Those who attempted her execution weren't finished with their business. And neither was she. The flames were dimming when movement stirred her consciousness. Harper had dozed in his wooden chair, rifle positioned across his thighs. Creaking timber alerted him first, followed by the gentle rustling of fabric. She was attempting to sit upright, barely managing, blinking at the shadows like she questioned their reality. Her mouth parted, dried lips forming soundless words before a whisper finally emerged. "Where have you brought me?" Harper remained still, keeping his tone low and even. "This is my territory, my home roughly 6 miles from Cold Pine's center." Her eyes closed slowly and reopened. "They attempted my execution." "They tried," he confirmed. Silence filled the space between them once more. She didn't inquire about his identity or express gratitude, simply drew the covering closer around her frame. Like uncertainty about her safety lingered. Harper understood that response. Trust carried a steep price in these regions nowadays. After considerable time passed, she spoke again. "They call me Nanton. It signifies one who communicates with spirits." Harper acknowledged with a single nod. "I'm called Jed Harper." Her head tilted slightly, eyes sharpening. "You weren't military, yet you freed me from that tree." Felt like the proper choice to make. This response earned a subtle smile, not exactly warmth, more like someone recalling what warmth once felt like. She examined her hands, studying the discoloration around her wrists. Their accusation was horse theft. "They labeled me dangerous." Harper leaned closer, his voice turning serious. "Were their claims accurate?" She offered no response, simply gazed into the fire as if it contained secrets meant only for her understanding. He didn't press for answers. Some truths required time to surface naturally. Instead, he filled a metal cup with water and offered it to her. She drank carefully, deliberately, then placed it down with hands that trembled once before regaining control. Outside, the wind had shifted direction. The threatening clouds that had loomed throughout the night were beginning to disperse. But Harper understood better than to trust clear western skies. "They'll return searching," she stated, finally not posed as a question. "Without doubt," he replied. "And discovering me here means they won't show you mercy." Her gaze met his then truly, seeing him as if measuring the depth of scars hidden beneath his quiet exterior. Whatever she recognized proved sufficient. She nodded once, briefly. Harper stood, stirred the flames back to life, then moved to the doorway and surveyed the landscape beyond. Still empty, yet he sensed wrongness carried on the breeze. Towns didn't execute women without contingency plans. Prepared. Tomorrow would bring riders armed with questions and weapons. But tonight, beneath a roof he hadn't shared in years, a hunted woman continued breathing. That was enough for the present moment. Dawn brought circling scavengers. Harper spotted them before hoofbeats reached his ears, 4 dark shapes gliding deliberately above the southern ridge. In these parts, such signs carried singular meaning. Death had occurred or was imminent. He stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, shotgun positioned against the doorframe. The wind carried dust particles and distant sounds. Then came the rhythmic percussion of hooves crossing dry earth. Behind him, floorboards creaked. Nan appeared at the threshold, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes remaining sharp despite the bruising. She didn't ask about his observations, she already understood. Harper turned his head slightly. Visitors approaching. How many? 3, possibly 4, moving cautiously like they're uncertain what they'll discover. She joined him on the porch. Expression unreadable. They'll torch your property simply to make their point clear. Harper sipped his coffee. Let them attempt it. They observed the horizon in silence. Horses materialized, first dust-coated, lean animals prepared for conflict. Their riders carried weapons positioned low, faces set with grim determination. Sheriff Brackett led the group predictably, wearing the same weathered badge and speaking with a preacher's cadence wrapped around a killer's instincts. He stopped 5 yards from the fence line, touching his hat brim. "Morning, Harper." Harper offered no response. Brackett continued, eyes scanning past him toward the cabin. "Heard about last night's troubles. A woman disappeared from town. You wouldn't have witnessed anything unusual in this direction, would you?" Harper held his position. "Strange occurrences happen regularly out here, Sheriff. Coyotes wailing like spirits, buzzards soaring lazily, but no missing woman." The sheriff's smile lacked warmth, his eyes remaining cold. "Interesting response. Several witnesses swear they observed tracks heading this way, bare footprints, small size, recently made. Any knowledge about those?" Harper took another slow sip. "I'm no tracking expert, Sheriff. I focus on fence maintenance and livestock care." Brackett's expression hardened. He glanced at his companions before returning his attention to Harper. "Let me clarify something sheltering. A fugitive makes you complicit, regardless of whether she's Apache. Especially if she's Apache." Harper met his stare directly. "Are you finished?" Brackett considered this for a moment, then turned his horse around. "For now." They departed slowly but with purpose. Harper knew their return was inevitable, with additional men, with torches, possibly with worse intentions. He watched until the dust settled, then turned to Nanton. Fear wasn't visible in her expression, only readiness. "They're returning," he stated. She nodded. "Let them come." In that instant, Harper grasped the nature of the approaching conflict. This wasn't about establishing guilt or innocence, not even about survival. This was about defiance, refusing to surrender, refusing to disappear. Two remnants of a dying world, standing together on land that had forgotten mercy. The wind carried hoofbeat echoes long after the riders vanished, and the scavengers maintained their aerial patrol. That evening brought a change in the wind's direction, now blowing eastward, hot and arid, the type that whispered of matches and retribution. Harper stood near the barn, checking lantern fuel when reflected light caught his attention, just a brief glint of glass high on the ridge. Observers with scopes there, positioning themselves, he announced aloud, though Nanton had already appeared beside him. "They'll wait for darkness," she said, pulling her blanket tighter, "then advance with fire." Harper agreed. "They want to create an example." From the barn's edge, they could see the cabin weather-beaten but solid, constructed by hand beam. By someone who believed that sufficient work might prevent grief from catching up to him. Now it faced destruction in a single night. He turned toward her. "Leave now. Follow the dry creek westward. You might gain half a day's advantage." She remained silent. He lowered his gaze. "You owe me nothing." Her voice stayed calm. "And you owe me nothing either. Yet here we stand." They fell quiet again. As darkness approached, Harper opened the concealed compartment beneath the barn floor. Inside lay powder sacks, wire coils, and iron devices wrapped in burlap remnants from a previous existence. Railroad conflicts, they were called, blasting through mountains to lay steel, eliminating men when negotiations collapsed. He hadn't touched them in 8 years. "You constructed this place like a stronghold," she observed, crouching beside him. "No," Harper replied. "I built it like a grave. I simply didn't realize it." They worked without words, traps prepared, fuses positioned. The barn was wired to illuminate the night sky if necessary. Afterward, they stood by the porch as the final light drained from the world. "What if they bring reinforcements?" she asked. "Then we'll demonstrate the price of their actions." In the distance, a dog barked a signal. Another responded with an echo. Brackett's forces were converging. Harper struck a match and studied the flame. It danced small in the breeze, struggling to survive. He let it burn to his fingertips before extinguishing it. "Prepare yourself," he said, and somewhere within, he felt familiar fire awakening again. Not rage or terror, just the clear, steady burden of purpose. The initial blaze ignited near the livestock pen. Harper detected the flicker before smelling smoke. Then came the crackling of dry grass, igniting like paper, wind spreading it across. The slope toward the barn. Panic didn't overtake him. Fire was a familiar adversary, predictable. Hungry, certainly, but not intelligent. Men posed the genuine threat. He stood at the fence, watching flames advance. From the trees beyond, laughter reached his ears. Brackett's men, intoxicated by power and whiskey, celebrating prematurely. "They believe victory is assured," Nanton said, materializing beside him, face illuminated by firelight. Harper nodded. "We'll allow them that illusion." He turned toward the barn. Flames crept toward its northern wall. The explosive charge within wouldn't detonate, yet not without his signal. But if the roof caught fire, everything could ignite. "How much time?" she asked. Harper glanced at the moon, now high and brilliant. "Minutes remain." He gestured toward the cabin. "Stay low. When the signal comes, don't hesitate." Nanton paused. "And you?" "I remain here." Her jaw tightened. "You stay and perish." He met her gaze. "I stay and finish this." She didn't argue, simply vanished into shadows. Harper returned his attention to the barn. Firelight danced higher now, flickering on metal fixtures, climbing. The hay pile edges like a preacher reading scripture. He moved to the fuse. Mechanism simple wiring running down the slope along fence posts into the barn's foundation. He lit a sulfur match stub. Wind threatened to extinguish it. He cupped it protectively, waited, then spotted movement at the tree line. Figures emerged from brush, rifles lowered, boots moving quickly. 6 of them now, Harper whispered. He touched the match to the wire. The hill responded with thunder that split the valley as fire erupted from the barn in a burst of light and debris. Men screamed, some thrown clear, others less fortunate. The ground shook, horses bolted. Through the flames, Brackett's voice shouted something that didn't sound victorious. Harper watched without moving. From behind the smoke, Nanton emerged, blood marking her cheek. Knife in hand, 2 eliminated by the west fence, the rest scattered. He handed her his spare rifle. "Let's finish this before they reorganize." Together they disappeared into the night. The rancher who had buried his grief in dust, and the woman who refused to be erased. Some battles weren't about winning. They were about refusing to lose. The smoke hadn't settled when spurs began ringing, faint at first, metal against stone, then louder. Measured, not hurried. Harper froze behind a split-rail post, heart stilled. These weren't Brackett's men, who shouted, cursed, and kicked dust when they moved. Who the devil? Nanton whispered beside him. Harper responded with silence. He already knew. There had been a man silhouetted in dust outside Carson's Crossing, a decade past, who'd ridden into a corrupt sheriff's camp with nothing but a cattleman's rope and a weary mare, leaving with blood on his saddle and 4 lawmen dead. Harper never forgot that walk, calm, rhythmic, the sound of finality. Now it echoed again. The spurs stopped. A voice emerged, not sharp, just clear. "Jed Kane." Harper stepped from behind the fence. "That name's buried. I go by Jed now." The figure materialized from smoke-long coat, dust-colored hat, rifle across his back. "You always preferred burying names to burying problems." Harper squinted. "Caleb Brackett." The man smiled. "You knew I'd arrive." Harper nodded. "You always enjoyed watching your own fires up close." Brackett surveyed the area. "You transformed this place into a battlefield." Harper shrugged. "The world brought war to my doorstep. I simply answered." Behind him, Nanton stepped forward, her blade still stained red. Brackett's gaze shifted to her. So this is your choice now, bleeding for phantoms and women. Harper didn't look at her. I choose to stop running. Silence stretched. Then Brackett stepped forward slowly. No rifles, he said. Just you and me, Jed, like before. Harper dropped his repeater in the dirt. Agreed. They stood 10 paces apart, two men whose lives had narrowed to this single thread. Wind blew ash between them. A hawk circled overhead, silent witness to what the world kept trying to forget. Then it happened. The gunshot echoed once, then silence. Brackett fell slowly, like a man surrendering more than blood. His revolver slid from his fingers, eyes wide, not with fear, but with something older. Recognition. Harper stood over him, chest heaving. You shouldn't have come. Brackett's lips moved, perhaps a curse, perhaps a prayer. Then breathing stopped. Nanton approached carefully. Are you all right? Harper nodded, but it was the kind of nod a man gives a grave, not a friend. From the ridges, Brackett's remaining men scattered. Fire had consumed half the corral. The barn was nothing but blackened skeleton. But quiet had returned, too quiet. The kind that meant fighting was finished, but peace hadn't arrived yet. Later, they interred the bodies. No markers, no prayers, just earth, sweat, and wind to remember them. Harper kept Brackett's hat, not for sentiment, merely to remind himself. What silence cost. As the sun disappeared behind hills, Nanton stood at the porch edge, infant in her arms. The child had slept through thunder, fire, and death, now watching the sky like it owed her something. We'll head north at first light, Nanton said. My sister waits near Red Basin. Perhaps we can begin anew. Harper watched her. You'll succeed. She nodded. And you? He looked at the landscard, burned, but alive. I'll ride south. Mary Hendricks still requires escort. Denver's trail is long. Nanton's smile was faint. The solitary man rides again. Not solitary, he said, looking at the infant. Just incomplete. She reached out, touched his shoulder. It conveyed more than farewell ever could. The following morning, the trail divided, one toward mountains, one toward plains. Harper rode westward, hoofbeats soft against ash and gravel. Behind him, wind whispered through broken fencing, across burnt soil, over blood that would fade, but never be forgotten. And ahead lay not peace, perhaps, but purpose. Sometimes a man builds barriers to keep the world out. But true strength lies in knowing when to open the gate. In the Wild West, justice isn't always about law. Sometimes it's about standing firm when silence would be easier. Because remaining human means not forgetting what deserves to be remembered.